We're going to take a look at adding and subtracting fractions. Now, before we start adding and subtracting, let's just go over a couple vocabulary terms involving fractions. So fractions always consist of a numerator and a denominator. The numerator is the number on top of the fraction, and the denominator is the number on the bottom of the fraction. Every fraction has both, because you have to have a value on the top and on the bottom. So in this example right here for this fraction, the numerator, number on top, is 11. And the denominator, number on the bottom, is 4. Before fractions can be added or subtracted, they need to have a common denominator. So a common denominator is something that we have to have before we can do the addition or the subtraction. What is a common denominator? Well, we just saw denominator is the number on the bottom of the fraction. Now, if we're going to add fractions, that means we've got two of them, at least two of them. So common means it's the same denominator. Here it is. This is our definition. Common denominator means the same number on the bottom of both fractions. We're going to make sure that we have that first before we add or subtract the fractions. Let's look at an example. Okay, so here, if you look at this problem here, notice we're adding two fractions, and look at the denominators, the numbers on the bottom. Are they the same? They are, right? We have a 4 and a 4. Both of the denominators are a 4, which means we already have a common denominator. So the way this works, once you have a common denominator, the answer is, of course, also going to be a fraction. So my answer is going to be a fraction, and the denominator is going to stay the same. These are 4s. This is still going to be a 4 on the bottom. And then all we do is add the numerators. So the numbers on top, I'm going to do 11 plus 5. 11 plus 5 is a 16. So that goes right here on top. And this is the answer. Now, of course, when you're working with fractions, before you make it your final answer, you always want to check and see if you can simplify the fraction. And this fraction can indeed be simplified. Actually, 16 divided by 4 gives us a whole number. It's a 4. So this is our final answer here, 4. Let's look at an example with subtraction. So here, I've got the same two fractions. Only difference is now, you see this, now we're subtracting them. Subtraction works the same way. We need a common denominator, which we have. We have 4s on the bottom. So for my answer, it's going to be a fraction, and it's also going to have a 4 on the bottom. Now I just need to subtract the numerators. 11 minus 5 is a 6. This is our answer, 6 over 4. Is that our final answer? Well, let's see if we can simplify this. This one actually can be simplified. And by the way, if you want a review on simplifying fractions, you can check out the video that I have for simplifying fractions. But basically, to simplify a fraction, we check the numerator and the denominator and see if they have a common factor, meaning a number that can multiply to make the 6 and the 4. And you know what? 2 is a factor of 6. 2 is also a factor of 4, so I can divide by that common factor. Divide the numerator by 2, divide the denominator by 2. 6 divided by 2 is a 3. 4 divided by 2 is a 2. And this now is our final answer. That is our fraction in simplified form. Okay, let's look at some other examples. So here we've got 2 over 3 plus 4 over 5. First thing to check, do we have a common denominator? Are the numbers on the bottom the same? No, they're not. One is a 3 and the other is a 5. So that means we now have to find a common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be a number of which 3 and 5 are both factors. So a number that 3 multiplies to make and a number that 5 multiplies to make. Now there's an easy way to always find a common denominator, and that's going to be to multiply by the other denominator. So how does this work? So if I'm looking at the first fraction, the denominator is a 3. So what I want to do now is multiply by the other denominator, which is a 5. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by 5 here. But I can't do it only to the bottom of the fraction. I have to do it to the bottom and the top of the fraction. So I have to do this. Multiply it by 5 on the top and the bottom. Now let's do the same thing for the second fraction. So the denominator is a 5. I need to multiply by the opposite denominator, which is a 3. So this fraction I'm going to multiply by 3 on top and bottom. Times 3 times 3. And then let's see what we get here. So here 5 times 2 is a 10. Here 5 times 3 is a 15. Plus here 4 times 3 is a 12. And then here 5 times 3 is a 15. And now take a look. Do we have a common denominator? We do. The common denominator is now 15. So now we can go ahead and add the fractions. So this is what we'll do here. This is going to be our answer. The denominator stays the same, so it's going to remain 15. And then I add the numerators. 10 plus 12 is a 22. This is our answer. Next step is to check and see if we can simplify this fraction, but that fraction cannot be simplified. So that's our final answer. The next one that we have here is very similar. It's actually the same two fractions. Only difference is we're not adding, we're subtracting. So let's go ahead and subtract these. Again, the denominators are not the same, so we have to find a common denominator, but we already did that. It's this exact same work that we did here. So we're going to end up with these same fractions. Only difference is we're going to be subtracting now. So this is what we're going to get here. 10 over 15. Right? When I find the common denominator, that fraction turns into that. And then when we multiply by 3's, top and bottom here, this one is going to turn into 12 over 15. And now we're subtracting. Denominators are the same, so we can write our answer. It's going to have the same denominator, 15 on the bottom. And now we need to do this. 10 minus 12. 10 minus 12 is a negative 2. Negative 2. So there's our answer. We can check to see if it simplifies. This one doesn't. So you can leave it like this. You know, another way you can write this is also, and sometimes you'll see it this way, a negative in front of the fraction, and then 2 over 15. Just so you know, both of these are correct. These are equivalent forms. You can put the negative here in the numerator, or you can put the negative out in front of the fraction. Either way is fine. Okay, I've got some for you guys to try. So here we are. Here's 3 different problems, 2 addition, 1 subtraction. Why don't you pause the video, try these on your own, then when you're ready to check your answer, you can come back and unpause and watch the solutions. Give it a try.